So welcome to another edition of Time About the Movies. Not only is this the 1998 leftover episodes, we're looking at the weekend of January 8th, 1999, which also happens to be the weekend of my 10th birthday, January 10th, 1999. But on top of all that, this is also our 500th Time About the Movies episode. We've done 500 episodes over the course of a year and a half, and that's pretty impressive. Me getting these out mostly every single day. There's been a couple. Early on, I know we had one day off, and then we went to the whole one episode a day format late last year, and this is kind of where we're at right now. And like I said, this is the 1998 leftovers episodes. I have 9 movies here, and most of them are straight-to-video animated films. Some good, most not so good. But we also have a remake of an Alfred Hitchcock movie on here as well that I thought was the most notable of the films I didn't get to cover last year, but we got a lot of movies to get to here, so let's try to be quick on these. Let's not waste any more time. Let's just jump right on into it, and we'll start off with probably the best of the direct-to-video films that came out in 1998, and that is The Lion King 2, Simba's Pride.
We are part of each other.
My name's Kobu. I'm Kiara.
Don't worry, Kiara. Pumbaa's coming. The good news is we found your daughter. The bad news is we dropped the warthog on her.
One day I won't be here. And I need you to carry on in my place.
These lands belong to Scar. Get out. What is your destiny?
I will avenge Scar.
Scar. Oh, heck of a guy. A little moody, but...
You were banished with the other outsiders.
You're one. Roar! Work with me.
The Lion King 2, Simba's Pride. The Circle of Life continues in an all-new sequel, only on video, October 27th.
Of course, this is a sequel to the biggest animated film of the time. The Lion King, of course, was the big hit. 4 years later, we have a story here that's basically influenced by Romeo and Juliet, and that's according to the director of this film, who said the final draft essentially became a version of Romeo and Juliet, where you have Simba and Nala's daughter, Kiara, who eventually grows up to be voiced by Neve Campbell, who falls in love with Kovu, played by James Marsden, who's a male rogue lion from Banished Pride that was once loyal to Simba's evil uncle, Scar, and separated by Simba's prejudice against the Banished Pride and a vindictive plot planned by Kovu's mother, Zira. Kiara and Kovu struggled to unite their estranged prides and be together. Yet most of the people are back from the original film, with the exception of Rowan Atkinson, who did not return, and of course Jeremy Irons, who was briefly replaced by Jim Cummings in one scene in the film. But yeah, the whole idea of Scar taking in this rogue lion was that when there was never indication that Scar had the time to do so in the first movie. That really sums up a lot of the problems of the film. Some of the stuff that they try to set up in the past film don't really connect, and the script never does a good job of sticking with the continuity of the events from the previous film. But other than that, though, the movie itself isn't actually too bad. I would honestly say that I thought it was kind of interesting they got everybody back here, including like the bigger stars, Matthew Broderick, Nathan Lane, who had just become a big star in this. Neve Campbell. I mean, Neve Campbell was in the Scream movies at this point, some of the biggest horror movies at the time, and and to be honest, they don't really breathe a lot of new life to the project themselves. They're kind of the same characters they were in the first movie, which isn't a bad thing, but you're working with a script that's not quite as strong as the original movie is, and a lot of the new life comes in with the newer characters, like Neve Campbell's character. I thought she was a very good addition to the storyline, and her and Kovu, they have a lot of good chemistry together. They have characters like Zero, who's kind of a generic villain. She's played nicely by Suzanne Pleshette, and I think her voice just perfectly fits that role. And Andy Dick is the kind of comic relief for the bad guys as Zero's son, and he can kind of get a couple of decent funny moments here and there, but nothing too much more about that one. But from an animation standpoint, it's definitely hard to do to top what the original film did. But as far as the direct-to-video movie goes, it still looks pretty impressive. You can definitely tell the budget is clearly in this film. And the story does a good job of taking those homages from Romeo and Juliet, just like the first one did with Hamlet. And it's a script that's handled pretty well here. The songs overall, I think, are very good. I mean, it's a lot of this is. I mean, they are actually some really nice songs featured in the film, written by a whole new group of people that had nothing to do with the original film. I mean, the first song in the film, "He Lives in You," is a surprisingly effective counterpart to the first film's "Circle of Life" that opens the movie up. And probably my favorite song in the whole thing is "We Are One," which is like, once you listen to it, I mean, you can't not get it out of your head. And it's amazing that that's the voice of Leonardo and Rocksteady doing the voice of Simba in that song, Camp Clark. And he's pretty good at that voice. I mean, Camp Clark usually can be very good with the voice work he does. And he's a good singer, too. I mean, go watch the Snoopy musical. I mean, he does this musical voice for Snoopy in there, and he makes that work, too. Of all the Disney direct-to-video sequels, this is probably one of the better ones. It manages to keep a lot of the good things that made the first movie a great film, adding some new elements that breathe some new life to it. It's definitely not as good as the first film, but it's a worthy follow-up that's worth a watch. I'd say definitely check it out if you haven't seen it. So let's go ahead and move on to another Disney direct-to-video film, and that is The Brave Little Toaster to the Rescue.
Disney presents the final chapter of the daring Brave Little Toaster. The Brave Little Toaster to the Rescue. Toaster, his household pals, and their owner, Rob,
We're his oldest and dearest friends.
are on an incredible adventure to save their animal friends with the help of a supercomputer.
Do something! I'll give it my best shot.
But now, their adventure has turned into a race to the rescue.
Heroic rescue effort lead to happy ending for all concerned.
Bring home this all-new animated movie featuring 5 original songs. Disney presents The Brave Little Toaster to the Rescue, coming in 1999. Collect all 3 Brave Little Toaster movies only on video.
You gotta love how this movie was advertised as the last of the Brave Little Toaster movies, but it's actually the literal direct sequel to the original film. In fact, at the end there, you saw them put that in the correct order. You have the Brave Little Toaster, then this movie, and then the Brave Little Toaster Goes to Mars, and it's really weird. And there's been a little bit of a confusion of when this movie came out. I mean, it says on Wikipedia in 1997. I thought it came out on video in 1998. But it says on there it came out on video. It came out in the United States in 1999. It actually came out in 1997 in the United Kingdom. So you know what? I'm just going down the middle here to say it's not technically released in 1998, but it's close enough. And the Brave Little Toaster and his friends have to rescue the animals at this veterinary hospital from being sent to a testing laboratory. And like I said, here in America, this was released by Disney a year after Goes to Mars. And as a 10-year-old, this was coming out. It was hard for me not to be confused by the continuity of this film, because the baby from Goes to Mars is not in this movie. And it's pretty clear, and they show you pretty clearly right away that Chris and Rob are not a married couple yet. It's not until the end of the film that the two actually get hitched. And you can tell that the rat character, Ratso, actually acts completely differently than he does in Goes to Mars, starting off as kind of a jerk, but slowly but surely comes around to the rest of the appliances, and by the end of the film. So, it definitely does not feel like an actual follow-up to Go to Mars, but it does, nor does it feel like it wraps into the series itself. But my first time seeing the movie, like I said, I left it very confused. The story played out pretty weird, but okay. It's been over 20 years now, and I've had the chance to see it again. And while I wasn't a biggest fan of Go to Mars, I will say that To the Rescue does kind of work as the better sequel in terms of doing an engaging and surprisingly effective story. I was actually pretty surprised at how this held up. I mean, it's not up to the same tier as the original film, but really, it's not going to. But it certainly makes a lot more logistical sense than something like Goes to Mars. And it doesn't completely pander down to its audience and insults the intelligence of kids like Goes to Mars kind of does. And once again, the animation isn't too bad for this film. It's Hyperion Animation. Usually they can do very good animation, even if the films aren't that great. Something like Bebe's Kids, for example. Not the greatest movie, but the animation overall is still pretty good. And the story as a whole is very formulaic, but there is a little bit of a sense that they're trying to keep both the audience and the adults and kids invested in what's going on. I thought the music overall was surprisingly good as well. They even have a song done by Aretha Franklin, of all people. It's a bizarre song, but it was a song that was tapping my toes a bit during the listening of it. You got all the cast from the original film back again, and they actually do have some decent names attached to this. Alfre Woodard's in here, Eddie Bracken, Andrew Daly, Eddie Deason, Victoria Jackson, Kevin Meaney, Jay Moore, Danny Nucci. Some notable names all throughout the film. Like I said, it's not a classic movie, but it definitely is a far superior sequel to Go to Mars in that it plays simple and straight to the point. It doesn't pander down to its intended target audience. It tries and, for the most part, succeeds at telling an interesting story. Throws in some nice animation, some good voice work, some weird but more enjoyable songs. It's not going to top the original film by any means, but it definitely feels like a better sequel than Goes to Mars does. And me personally, I thought it didn't even come close to it didn't even come close to reaching the bottom level that Ghost to Mars did. It's definitely a film that I think is better than Ghost to Mars. So let's go to some Warner Brothers direct-to-video movies. We have two here that we have right here. Batman and Mr. Freeze Subzero.
Wanted more, and it's here. Batman and Mr. Freeze Subzero. Deep within the frozen Arctic. Nora! The love of Mr. Freeze was shattered.
There aren't any deceased donors that match, and we'll have to use a live donor.
Copy, Dad. Sorry I'm late.
Hang on. An all-new feature-length adventure. Batman animation beyond anything you've seen before.
Let me go!
I want my daughter found.
Don't worry, sir. We're on it.
Brace yourself. If I'm not back in time, go without me.
What? Wait! Look out!
Subzero. From Warner Brothers Family Entertainment. Only.
So what happened here is that this movie was actually supposed to be released around the time Batman and Robin came out. But Batman and Robin, of course, ended up being a major flop, and so Warner Brothers basically pushed this back to get it away from around the same time period. And yeah, you can tell that Batman and Robin had a huge reason for why this film did not come out when it was originally intended to. But it came out later on in '98, and we should be grateful for it because it turned out to be a pretty good Batman movie. You have Mr. Freeze living in the Arctic with his cryogenically frozen wife. When a submarine destroys her containment capsule, he needs to find somebody to donate a new heart for her, but his search turns up only one donor with the right blood type, and it's Barbara Gordon. Her kidnapping sends Batman and Robin on a hurried chase to free her in time, and I mean, it's not going to come anywhere close to Mask of the Phantasm, but Subzero does a pretty good job of coming really close. I mean, I think the animation overall is very spectacular. You still get that same animation style used in the early seasons of Batman, the animated series, even though the new Batman series and the new Batman animation style had already come out at this point. But there's also a bit of animation style used in the Superman series thrown in here as well. The way they kind of blend the CG into the movie is well done too. You rarely see both 2D and 3D animation used as well as it is in here, especially for a direct-to-video feature like this. And you have great voice acting once again. Most of the people from Batman the Animated Series is back. The only character who gets a new voice over here is the late Mary Kate Bergman as Barbara Gordon, and just before Tara Strong eventually took over the role in the animated series. The story works well enough. I think it actually does tell a better story with Mr. Freeze than Batman and Robin did, and not making it seem really stupid. I mean, it's almost the exact same plot as Batman and Robin, except there's actually a lot more intelligence to it. There's a real thought process being brought into it, and just making it about how Alfred had the exact same disease as Mr. Freeze's wife, like in Batman and Robin. That didn't work out here. But the big difference, instead of it being about Alfred with the same disease, is about Freeze wanting to use Barbara's organs as a last hope to save his dying wife. And once again, it's a much better story creatively and narratively. The action sequences in the film are top notch. The final sequences alone have so many great tense action sequences. And Joel Schumacher really needed to look at this to make good action for his movies. But it really does come as close to as good as Mask of the Phantasm is. It's got some very small flaws in the storyline, but they don't ruin the enjoyment of the film. It's a film that just works on so many levels. It's one of DC's best animated films. You need to check it out if you haven't seen it already. You will not be disappointed by it. But let's get to probably the overall best movie that came out this weekend, also from Warner Brothers, Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island.
They've unmasked over 200 criminals together. Consider it practice. In the world television premiere, it's Scooby-Doo and the gang in a brand new movie adventure. This time, the monsters are real. Cartoon Network's Cartoon Theater presents Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island. Tonight at 8, only on Cartoon Network.
So needless to say, this was not your grandparents' Scooby-Doo. And in fact, I took that from the Cartoon Network's premiere of it because You know, back in 1998, that was a big deal for Cartoon Network to launch that cartoon theater, and they had those great commercials on TV. I really got to do a segment on that at some point for the Reviewing Network Live, because I really got to delve into that. I mean, when they promoted that, they really did a fantastic job of getting you psyched up for these movies. I mean, to have all those movies on there, and then this was supposed to be the big marquee premiere, the premiere of this new Scooby-Doo movie, where, you know, this has a much darker tone than any incarnation of the TV series had up to that point. And, of course, the selling point was the monsters are real. It's not somebody in a suit. It's not somebody in a mask. And this movie is amazing. This film is basically... It takes place after... What happens is that it starts off with them solving a mystery, and they do the Scooby-Doo treatment, and then it flashes to a couple years later where everybody's kind of split off, and they all decide to get back together to go on a new mystery, and they go find this haunted Bayou Island to investigate the ghost of Morgan Moonscar the pirate. And this was the first of several Scooby-Doo movies that have since come out since then. 25 years of Scooby-Doo movies on DVD and video. And, I mean, just wow. Not only does this movie hold up, but it's still pretty damn scary. There are some legitimately creepy and scary moments in this movie. Some of the zombie creations the film puts together just work so incredibly well in here in terms of creepiness and the transformations of some of these characters. They actually give you some nightmares. I'm not even kidding. I still get nightmares every once in a while watching some of these creatures in here. That's how strong this movie holds up. You can definitely get the sense that the people behind this movie wanted to make a Scooby-Doo movie like something George A. Romero would have directed, and the influence is definitely there. It's interesting because this was around the time that Hanna-Barbera was, all the properties were being bought by Warner Brothers, and of course everybody bought into Warner Brothers at this point, and they just let them continue making this movie that was so unique and so different from the Scooby-Doo formula. The animation in here is just incredible. This is some of the best animation that Warner Brothers has ever done, and some of the best animation Hanna-Barbera has ever done. The writing overall is great. The visuals are impressive. The voice acting is top-notch. The soundtrack featuring the Third Eye Blind version of the song is so well done. It fits the mood of this film incredibly well. Now, granted, future films in the series would eventually go back to having the formula of the guy in the costume again, but honestly, you know, Scooby-Doo and the Witch's Ghost and Scooby-Doo and the Alien Invaders are still pretty decent films. There was a huge streak of lackluster films, and they even made a sequel that was downright terrible to this film, where they basically retconned the whole thing and basically said, no, everything that happened on Zombie Island in the original film never happened in real life. It was actually a fake thing altogether. And just like, you sons of bitches. I hate that second sequel so much, but I just pretend that doesn't exist. But if you're looking for a good, fun animated movie this Halloween, go see Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island. Give it another watch, because it not only holds up, but it holds up a lot better than I think anybody could have ever imagined. It has great animation, great voice work, great writing, great scares. This is definitely one of the definitive Scooby-Doo projects ever. And even if you're not the biggest Scooby-Doo fan, you can still find so much stuff in here to admire about this movie. It's one you should watch every Halloween. I do my best to try to watch it every Halloween. It's one of my favorite Scooby-Doo projects ever. It's definitely worth the watch. Definitely check it out. The next sequel we have here, not so much. Going back to the Disney vault, and we have here Pocahontas 2, Journey to a New World.
Pocahontas took us on a breathtaking adventure in a Disney motion picture classic. Now the adventure continues in a brand new world premiere movie coming only to video. Pocahontas 2, Journey to a New World. It's a new epic chapter from the Pocahontas legacy, as Pocahontas and her friends embark on a fun-filled adventure in the new world of England, where they'll meet new friends and fight for the future of her people. It's an unforgettable new story with all your favorite characters from the original movie and 5 great new songs. Pocahontas 2, Journey to a New World, a brand new world premiere movie, only on video, summer 1998.
So Pocahontas 2 takes place after the events of the original Pocahontas. The first film dealt with her meeting with John Smith and the arrival of British settlers in Jamestown. In the sequel, Pocahontas journeys to England with John Rolfe to negotiate for peace between the two nations, although her death is omitted from the film's ending. And as far as the direct-to-video sequel to Pocahontas goes, I mean, it does kind of keep what makes the first movie worth the watch, but from an animation perspective, it's just okay. You can definitely see the budget in here. It's very lackluster compared to the original film, but it isn't the worst thing ever. I mean, it's a typical Disney budget formula. I mean, this isn't going to be a Land of the Lion King 2, but the voice work overall is nicely done. There are a couple emotional moments in here that actually did kind of work, but the basic story is just a dull fish out of water story. Let's take Pocahontas and bring her into England. Let's take her into a completely different place that she doesn't fit in, and let's make sure she's in the princess dress because we got to sell the dolls to the girls out there. Bottom line, not a very good movie. Certainly not bad by any means, but it's just okay for what it is. For a one-time watch, I didn't mind it so much, but it's one I rarely have had the urge to go back and watch, and probably for good reasons. So, anyway, let's go ahead and see what MGM has doing this year. MGM has a couple of movies that are direct-to-video as well, based off of some of their properties. Here's one of them, An All Dogs Christmas Carol.
Give your family the biggest doggone present ever.
It's gigantically humongous.
An All Dogs Christmas Carol, premiering only on video. Charlie and Itchy are on their most incredible adventure.
It's up to you to save Christmas.
And this time, they'll be going where no dogs have gone before. Bring home all the fun and enchantment in this brand new holiday classic.
God bless us, everyone.
An All Dogs Christmas Carol, available now.
So after All Dogs Go to Heaven 2, there was a TV series of the same name, All Dogs Go to Heaven the series, which ran on the Family Channel for a couple of seasons. Largely forgettable, quite honestly, and this movie actually serves as the finale to the TV series. The big difference is that while Dom DeLuise is back in here, and so is Ernest Borgnine from the last movie, Sheena Easton is also back here as well, but Steven Weber takes over the role of Charlie, that was originally played by Charlie Sheen in the last movie, All Dogs Go to Heaven 2. And here you have them getting back with Sasha and the gang to have a dickens of a time as they try to save Christmas from Carface, and a demon named Belladonna, who's basically the devil version of, Annabelle from the original film, and who wishes to use the dogs all over the world to ruin Christmas forever. And you would think it'd be so easy to do an adaptation of A Christmas Carol, but with All Dogs Go to Heaven, but surprisingly, they make it more complicated than it has any right to be. I mean, this is a film that is just so all over the place. They try to add these different new elements to the storyline to make it, just to give it a kind of an edge to other adaptations of the story, and it just doesn't work. It's a film that just really feels like it had to be there because they want to make money off of this, and they want this to be played on TV for years and years to come because it's Christmas, and studios and networks will find a way to look for stuff to get out there so they can have it played on TV every year. I mean, this was on Freeform's on Fox Family's 25 Days of Christmas for a number of years after it came out, so I guess it kind of worked, but it's largely been forgotten, and probably for good reason, because I barely remember the TV show itself, and honestly, I stopped giving it. There's nothing after the first movie. There was nothing really all that memorable about the other films in the series, nor the TV series, and I barely remember the television series as it is. And honestly, this might be one of the worst Christmas Carol adaptations ever. I mean, it's very hard to say because there are a lot of really good Christmas Carol adaptations, and this one just tries way too hard to add so many different elements to it, and it just gets way too complicated. And even I think kids wouldn't really get into it all that much if they saw this version. So that's An All Dogs Christmas Carol. I'll get to the other MGM animated sequel in just a little bit here, but let's look at a live-action movie that came out in 1998 that I want to talk about here, the remake of Rear Window starring Christopher Reeve.
After a tragic accident, Jason Kent is coming home.
I know you'll make something good out of all this. You always do.
To his life.
Hi, Claudia Henderson. Oh God, I'm so sorry.
You've been working on my project, keeping it warm for me.
Well, I hope I've been doing a little more than that.
Actually, I hope you have.
To friendly neighbors.
See that pond down there? Wait back through it for me.
And a killer view. But the more he looks, the more he suspects.
She's not there. Something's happened to her.
His neighbor is hiding.
I think he killed her last night.
A dark secret.
You've been spying on me. Dial 911. He knows you've been snooping around. He's coming after you. Get out of there quick.
You're breaking up.
Do you think I'm crazy?
You're not crazy. Just imaginative.
if I was to tell you that around this time, in this 1 week in 1998, you would have two remakes of Alfred Hitchcock classics come out. One was a made-for-TV movie for ABC, and the other was a big-budget Universal project with Vince Vaughn and the director of Good Will Hunting. Which one do you think would probably be the best of the two movies? Most of you would probably say Psycho, but no, Rear Window actually probably is the best of the two, even though not by that much. You basically have the same story as the original film. It's an updated version of it. You have this quadriplegic, played by Christopher Reeve, who's a former architect who now uses a wheelchair and relives the boredom of his daily existence by engaging in voyeurism, a pastime that has allowed him to spy on his neighbors from the rear window of his apartment. He witnesses the sculptor, Julian Thorpe, played by Richie Coster, viciously beat his wife, Eileen, played by Allison Mackey, and he reports the incident to 911, and the police removed him from his home. Thorpe was released the following day. In the night, Jason Kemp hears a blood-curdling scream from the courtyard. From the moment on, Eileen is missing from her apartment, apparently replaced by another woman, and Jason, certain she was murdered by her husband, tries to convince her colleague Claudia, played by Daryl Hannah, nurse Antonio, played by Ruben Santiago Hudson, and friend Charlie, played by Robert Forster, that his suspicion is true. And you can pretty much tell where it goes from there in terms of the story, and it's not the best remake of this story, and of course, nothing's going to top the original Alfred Hitchcock classic with Jimmy Stewart, but this is still much better than the Psycho remake. At least this one isn't trying to add saying it's a shot-for-shot remake and then adding more shots into the film for no reason whatsoever. At least this one was at least trying, and I thought Christopher Reeve overall was inspired casting in here. I mean, he does a pretty good job in this role, and sadly, he kind of fits the role well after what happened to him a couple years prior to this, but he is given a solid performance in here, as is Daryl Hannah, as is Robert Forster. There's a lot of good elements to the film that I did really like about it. Is it a great film overall? Not really, but it definitely is a lot better remake than something like Psycho was. The Psycho remake was just a mess on so many levels, but this, you can at least look at this and see they were trying. Maybe it didn't work all the way through, but at least it's a lot better than what was in theaters a couple weeks after this came out, So yeah, that's Rear Window. So let's go ahead and get back to the direct-to-video animated films and go to another MGM animated sequel. And as much as I hate All Dogs Christmas Carol, this one I probably hate even more. Secret of Nimh 2, Timmy to the Rescue.
What? The most fun-filled adventure of the year is coming only to video. The Secret of Nimh 2, Timmy to the Rescue.
Awesome!
When the mice of Thorn Valley need a big hero.
We're on a mission.
Only a little mouse named Timmy can save the day.
We got to save my parents.
Let's go!
Share all the fun. Bring the adventure home to your family.
That's my boy.
The Secret of Nimh 2, Timmy to the Rescue. Buy it for your family today.
Oh god, I hate this movie. Not only is it a sequel to one of my all-time favorite movies, it's a film that has nobody involved from the original film, and it's directed by one of the guys who was most notably known for his work on Batman the Animated Series, and it's just a mess. It's a mess of a movie. The sequel is basically you have Timothy Brisby, the young kid who, of course, was the sick kid in the original film, and the young son of Mrs. Brisby and her late husband, Jonathan. They travel to Thorn Valley, hoping to become a hero like his father. There, he meets a young female mouse, voiced by Hynden Walsh, who you know as the voice of Starfire on Teen Titans. They learn that the mice presumed dead during the Nimh escape are still alive, so they mount a rescue operation, but they don't tell you what exactly happens at the end of this, and if you've seen the movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The levels that this final climax goes into is unbelievable. Like, the movie up to that point is just a bad movie. It's mostly because they built this kid up in this town to be just like the father in the previous movie, even though Mrs. Brisby did a lot more than her husband did in the first movie, and she's barely mentioned in the film whatsoever. She doesn't have her own statue. Nobody barely mentions her accomplishments and what she was able to do. Like, everybody just had their memories of race a la Men in Black. It's just like, do these people not forget that Mrs. Brisby played a huge part in the events of the first movie and saved all those rats from the first movie? And, like, this film completely ignores every single bit of it. It's just like up to that point, like, the first 2/3 of the movie are not that bad. They're just are not as bad as you would think, as it eventually would become. It's mostly bad because it just basically pretends that Mrs. Brisby did absolutely nothing in the first movie, honestly. Like, she didn't do anything that she did in the original film. She's just kind of a pushover. It's all about Jonathan. It's about her son because, because men rule the world in this universe, I guess. But Then we get to the third act, and then it just goes completely against the wall. There's a part in the film where Martin, Tim's brother, gets kidnapped and sent to Nimh, and when they get to Nimh, they realize that Martin has become the bad guy, and is voiced by Eric Idle, who's playing this weird, bizarre, evil version of this character that is just so out of left field, and it's just like, what the hell is even going on here? And it's just like, nothing about this makes any sense whatsoever. Like, why is Eric Idle even in here to begin with playing this character? Why are we even doing this? Like, it's like, nothing about what they're doing here makes any sense whatsoever, and it's sadly just completely, it just pushes the film to a level of badness that's just, you have to see it to believe it. Like, you honestly have to see it to believe it. I would honestly say, see this movie just to see how crazy it gets, because it gets crazy when it's all said and done. It's an unbelievable mess of a film. Just a bad movie. Really bad film. Secret of Nimh 2, Timmy to the Rescue. I'd say avoid it like the plague, but see it just to see how BF insane it gets, because it gets crazy when it's all said and done. So, on to the last film we have here, Ferngully 2, The Magical Rescue.
Daddy's back. In Ferngully 2, The Magical Rescue. He's in the air.
Mayday, mayday.
He's over the top.
Survey says.
He's totally out of control. And he's taking all his Ferngully friends along for the ride. Only on video, it's an all-new animated adventure featuring brand new songs.
Gotta remember those windows.
Ferngully 2, The Magical Rescue, coming to video March 17th.
I would say this is as bad as the original film, but I don't even think the original film was all that great. I saw the original film, thought it was alright, but nothing too spectacular. So when they made this movie, I largely ignored it. You basically have the story of the fairies of Ferngully that must venture outside the rainforest to rescue several young animals who were captured by poachers, and instead of Krista from the last film, who's completely, kind of like with Mrs. Brisby in The Secret of Nimh 2, completely unnecessary in this film. We're basically following Pips and his crew. And by the way, nobody comes back from the original film here. Not Robin Williams, not Christian Slater, not I can't remember who plays Kristen now from the first movie. Samantha Mathis, that's who it was. But yeah, none of them come back for this movie. The animation doesn't look too bad, but the whole story doesn't really work all that well. The whole movie is about rescuing these animals, but Pip and his friends get too distracted by the park that's somehow in the middle of this forest, and television and cars and all these different things, and they are really pointless characters in this film. They have no other representation of what they want to do here, is what their goal here is. Like, they get so distracted by everything, and I mean everything. They get so distracted by so many different things. It's just like, what are we even doing this for? Like, these animals would be dead by the time they finally realize, oh, we have to get to these people, these animals, I should say, and it just doesn't work. The bad guy is your typical stock Saturday morning cartoon bad guy. Nobody really does anything of importance here. The jokes aren't funny. The animation isn't that great. I mean, I take that back. The animation isn't bad per se, but it's nothing memorable. It's just kind of there, and it just feels like a bad direct-to-video sequel. And a lot of these sequels that we've looked at on the show today, most of them kind of have the same trailer that they sell you on. They have it talk about all your favorite characters are back, and we have all these different songs in here that you're gonna love, which 9 times out of 10 you don't really love when it's all said and done. And this movie has no great songs in it. It's just a largely forgettable film for a film that wasn't great to begin with, but I don't know. The kids liked the first time, and it was a big hit for them, so let's make a sequel. Why not? So anyway, that's Ferngully 2, The Magical Rescue. So with that said, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies. We'll finally get into some 99 movies next week with Varsity Blues. We also have At First Sight, Virus, and In Dreams. So 4 films we'll look at, the first 4 films of 1999. We'll delve into those on the next episode. But until then, thank you very much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the playlist on the next page, check out the previous episode, and I will see you guys tomorrow for another episode. So thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. Until then, as always, take care.